Welcome to Hide and Create, your online writing workshop.
I should have started drinking before I logged on.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger.
You know what? I'm already lost.
That's your thing, Jordan.
Wow.
You say something and you go, right?
Is this being recorded?
Magic mice creatures.
I should have thought of that.
Good! See, I knew I set myself up.
You guys have been passing the joint around while it was going on.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for being ridiculous there. I could put that in the intro. Welcome back to part 2 of Hide and Create's episode on the hero's journey. Last week we focused on Christopher Vogler's steps involved in the hero's journey. This week we examine the chosen one trope and how that relates to the hero's journey, and whether or not it's good for society. So with me today, of course, are my co-hosts Jaye Wells, Moses Siregar, and Joshua Essoe. And without further ado, we're going to get to it.
So why shouldn't we use the hero's journey?
All right, I love talking about this. So, so the monomyth is it's very much about, like Joshua said, the farm boy comes out of nowhere, discovers they're the chosen one, and then saves the world. Right? So Harry Potter is a very good example of this. By virtue of his birth, he is the one that is going to eventually destroy Voldemort. Right? So.
Spoiler alert.
Oh no, I mean that's right in the very start, right? You know, like I mean the start of the first novel, it says you are destined to eventually destroy this big bad, and I think that's a problem in today's society, right? I think that people have, and Fight Club is about this, right? And which is one of my favorite novels.
My other favorite novel/movie.
Yeah, the movie's actually better than the novel, and I think Chuck Palahniuk admitted as much. But anyways, we aren't all chosen one. In our real life, we aren't all the chosen ones, right? But what reading that story, that monomyth, over and over and over again in all different media. You're kind of taught to expect that. You're taught to expect that you're innately special, right? Like you're never the person next door to the chosen. You're not Luke's next door neighbor, right? Nobody's ever like that, right? Everybody's always Luke. So I think what happens is that people are taught to believe that they are going to get a prince or princess later on, right? They are taught to believe that they will eventually save the world or become super rich or whatever the case may be down the road.
Participation rewards?
Yeah, but those things don't happen in real life. You have to work for them, right? But the key aspect of the monomyth generally, right, or at least the way it's been transformed in the modern day, is that the hero is born special. They just don't have to work for it, right? And that's why I think it causes a lot of damage. I think stories like Harry Potter cause a lot of damage to society, right? I think.
Oh, wow.
I think
that's such a big statement.
I know.
I think that you're right that Hollywood and certain treatments of the monomyth that have not been well done can give that impression. But if you look at if you read the steps, there's work involved. You have to set forth a goal, and you have to believe in something, and you have to work for it, and you have to be tested, and then only then can you earn the boon. Yeah. I think that, yes, there are examples that are poorly done that might give that impression, but even Harry Potter still had to go to school to learn how to use magic.
Hermione should be the hero of that story, right? I mean, Harry Potter was destined to do it even without Hogwarts, right? If you look at whatever all the prophecies that he's given at the very start, right? I mean, Hogwarts, I guess, was to prepare him for that eventual journey, but it was never implied that Hogwarts was necessary, right? I think a really great example of this, and I know that we're trying not to quote movies too much, but it's a movie called Limitless, right? With Bradley
Cooper.
Bradley Cooper.
Oh yeah, I've seen that on my Netflix recommendations.
So I would really recommend reading Limitless as a writer because you get to see how the monomyth has really corrupted our society, right? The hero in that is kind of a loser, who's a science fiction author. What a loser! And there's a smart pill, right? So he gets a smart pill, he takes this pill, becomes super intelligent, and can basically rule the world, right? And the bad guy in that is Warren Buffett. Basically, Warren Buffett, somebody who's spent his life making savvy investment moves, and saving his money, and being prudent, and all the things that you should do in regular real life, right? And that's the bad guy. And the reason he's bad is because he's upset that our hero has an unfair advantage in this drug, and that he's jumped the queue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Which you really should be upset about that, like that. Somebody taking drugs, a performance enhancer, we don't like that in the Olympics, right? Like that really should be something you're upset about. But because the monomyth has kind of so twisted storytelling in our society, and you're right, Jay, the original monomyth did involve a fair amount of work, but I'm talking about the monomyth that it has become. That limitless Bradley Cooper can be the hero of that movie and nobody cares.
Well, it's interesting because, obviously the hero's journey isn't only used in fantasy and science fiction, although it's obviously a very big impact there. But I think what you're talking about is, I don't know. I guess Harry Potter's a book, but it happens a lot in Hollywood. But my Sabina Cain series had this chosen element. But I really played a lot with the fact of, destiny versus free will. And I think that you can really explore that with the hero's journey, and whether or not I don't think it's always a given that somebody is chosen and boom, no matter what happens, they're going to earn that. And I think my issue with people using the hero's journey is not really understanding it and using it as a formula, which is where I think you end up with these kind of shortcuts like you're talking about. If you really study it and you understand that this is a metaphor for a process that a human goes through to become basically a better human, and that there's work involved in that, then I think you can tell really wonderful stories. But yes, some of the treatments of it do give these kind of messages that aren't so great.
So I would love to, I've never disagreed so thoroughly philosophically with Jordan on anything. It's just exciting.
Yes.
I'm just oh my God, I totally disagree with you about that.
Hit me.
I'm on the way on the other end of the planet from you on that one. Fun. I love it.
Send me a telegram. Let's hear it.
So, okay, before I fully go there, one thing you said, kind of a spin-off idea, it's a little bit like what you said, but probably not really, where I do think the stories we read hurt society a little bit, is when, the farm boy, there's always the monolithic black evil other people thing. I think that actually does warp our perceptions a bit, where we're always the good guys and the other people are always the bad guys. I think that does hurt the way people relate to people in other countries and things like that. Anyway, I thought of that. But about the hero's journey specifically, I think it is such a positive thing. I believe we are all the heroes of our own journeys, of our own lives. And we're all on this journey facing ordeals, refusing a call to things that we do need to do, and having that reluctance and getting the mentorship and the wisdom that we need to face our fears and face our challenges. And ultimately, I think the purpose of our lives are to, overcome some challenges, transform, and bring back some kind of elixir, some kind of wisdom through our process of growth that we bring back to the world and try to make the world a better place. I think we all go through that in a different way, and I think that's why this speaks to us, because when we see a movie like this or read a book that follows this type of structure, we can relate to those stages. And I relate, very much to these stages as archetypal life experiences that I've had, and I feel like everyone probably has. And I go and see a movie heck, even something as corny as the first Spider-Man, with great power, great responsibility comes great power. I see a movie like that which is focused on the hero's journey, and it makes me think about myself a little bit. And I say, well, what what kind of responsibility do I have? You know, and it's inspiring. I think it's uplifting to put yourself in the shoes of the hero and think about what are the dragons that you're trying to slay in your life, and you know, just to kind of participate in experiencing that process of that story and realizing that you're a hero just like everyone else is going through your own stages of life. So I love the hero's journey.
My problem is that the modern incarnation of the hero's journey discourages action, right? Because you're born into greatness, right? Mm-hmm. And I guess it's not modern because you used to be born into greatness as a prince. Prince William is born into greatness, right? That guy hasn't done anything that you and I haven't done except he was born, right? He won the genetic lottery.
Well, he's born into wealth, anyways.
So there's a book called Whatever Happened to Kansas, right? And it's quite a fascinating read. And basically, it looks at the fact that Kansas is one of the poorest states in the Union, right? So for them, they would absolutely have a huge. It's to their benefit to vote Democrat, right? Because the Democrats, at least at the time that the book was written, favored poor people more than Republicans do, right? And yet, Kansas is one of the reddest states out there, right? And so this author tries to figure out why that is. And one of the conclusions that he comes to is that we are all taught through these stories, right, that we're going to become rich. We're going to become the princes and the princesses and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So nobody wants to ruin paradise before they get there, right? So that's why, according to this author, a lot of people in Kansas would vote Republican against their own interests because we are taught that eventually we'll be rewarded whether or not we do anything to get there.
It's interesting, too, because I think that what you're saying parallels what I see the metamorphosis of the American dream, right? Mm-hmm. The classical American dream. Because I think the American dream kind of pretty much parallels the hero's journey, at least as it was when it first came into being. And now, maybe not so much, kind of like what you're saying.
I don't think it's the hero's journey's fault. I mean, I think to blame all of the societal stuff on the hero's journey stories is kind of not fair, because we're also living in a society that you have the anti-hero's journey, which is reality TV. There's no journey there. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even like there's no nobility, there's no fighting for the greater good. It's just a bunch of people, whatever. But
Amen, sister.
I'm preaching. But I can't think of an example. I mean, I think the chosen thing, you're right. There is an inherent privilege built into the chosen story, right? Like, you have to already be born into these advantages to be able to experience the boon. But I think that, I don't know, like the hero's journey that I think of isn't about being the chosen. It's about somebody being called to something bigger than themselves. And I mean, maybe we're just thinking of different examples.
No, I think the same thing in a different way.
I think even the humblest person, all of us, basically, I mean, that's the whole archetype of the hero's journey. You were chosen, destined to some purpose, some challenge, something that you have to overcome in your life and grow and make a positive life. And I believe there's truth in that. Like, you are chosen to something. Like, whatever it is, I don't know. And I think we need more of that sort of heroic inspiration. Like, the sense of just kind of, being on reality TV, like you said, was a great example. Or, that sort of going nowhere mentality is where a lot of people are stuck. And I think the hero's journey inspires us, meant to inspire us to find our own higher sort of journey and meet those challenges.
Well, and if you think about the fact that this hero's journey, this monomyth, is the whole theory of it is derived on ancient mythology throughout the course of human history. And what you're talking about is a very modern problem. I mean, generations and generations have grown up on the hero's journey, and they did okay. So I don't think it's necessarily the hero's journey that's causing people to believe that they don't have to work for fame or whatever. I think it's our society. It aggrandizes fame over like hard work and like doing something good for other people. And so I don't know. Like, I don't necessarily see the causation between the hero's journey and that.
It seems a little bit like the chicken. It seems a little bit like the chicken or the egg.
Sorry, we're all talking about what the point that I made. Let me just jump in here and say I agree with Moses and Jay, right? That I especially like that Jay said the hero's journey was the metaphor for the growth of a human being. That's totally right, and Moses I think echoed that statement, right? Let me clarify and just say that I guess my problem is the monomyth, the chosen one monomyth. I guess is my problem, right? Like. The monomyth with, innate privilege. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting, too. You're talking about, like, everybody thinks that they can be the hero, and I think everybody can be. I agree with Moses on that. But one of the really interesting things is even villains think that they're the hero.
Yeah, they have their villain's journey.
Right, that there's a villain's journey. But they think they're the hero. They think that they're justified in their actions, and those make the best villains because they're, kind of like you can kind of understand, why they set out on their own journey, and so I don't know. It's interesting. There's a lot of layers to it.
The hero's journey isn't easy. The hero goes through those challenges if it's a good hero's journey. So it's there's still even in it a sense of like working on. You have to work. You have to overcome things. So I think when it's done right, it can be beautiful. I think and it's spoken to people for a really long time for a reason.
Yeah, I wonder if, but it hasn't always spoken to people, right? Like the earliest examples of the hero's journey is, like Moses or Buddha or Christ or any of those.
Wow,
those
Moses,
people.
You keep good company.
Yeah,
yeah.
But in societies where there's no social mobility, right? Like look at. Greek mythology, for instance, right? You do have the myth of Prometheus, which is a hero's journey, right? But many times it's like uber powerful god gets themselves into trouble. Haha, look what happens to they get themselves out of trouble, right? In societies with no social mobility, I don't think that the hero's myth works.
But
right?
These stories are so enduring. I mean, the hero, whatever the hero happens to be in whatever culture, whatever setting, those stories have always spoken to people. Like, that's why we still tell those stories and know those stories. And why do we tell those stories as opposed to something that we never told? Like, because these do speak to us. I'm passionate about the hero's journey.
There's also variation. There's also that variation of the hero's journey where, it can pass on to somebody else. If you don't choose this task, if you don't accept the call, then it's going to go on to this other person. Right? Yeah. Kind of like with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She dies, there's always another girl to take her place.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that the hero's journey is worldwide either. It might be an Indo-European phenomenon. Like, if you think of, Eastern literature, the Journey to the West, that's about, I guess the start of it is about the Monkey King, right? But it follows whatever a scholar going to India, right? Like, it's not a country bumpkin by any means, right? Like,
I don't think I agree. I think that it is worldwide. I don't think that it's just Western culture because, my wife is from Hong Kong, and so she grew up reading all of these Chinese books and all of these old epic fantasies, as it turns out.
Right.
And the way that she's described these stories to me, and these are old stories, it's the hero's journey in these things. And they're awesome, with all the kinds of crouching tiger, flying, or whatever, dragon and monkeys or whatever it is. All of that stuff is going on.
Yeah, that sounds
Haven't you ever heard of flying tigers, dragon monkeys?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's totally the hero's journey in those stories, and I wish that they were English translated so I could read them also.
Journey to the West is awesome. I love the Monkey King.
I mean, that's literally what the Hero with 1,000 Faces is. It's Joseph Campbell going through global, mythologies from Africa to India to Siberia to everywhere, and going through and finding these archetypal stages of the hero's journey that he noticed in all of these stories and religious stories as well, and all these things. And, any given culture is going to have their own spin on it. They may skip certain parts of it and so on. But he tried to sort of take a step back and see all of the common threads that seem to lace all these things together. Now, some scholars would probably disagree with him, and maybe say that he's generalizing this too much and making it fit too much. I mean, that's something that, eggheads can debate. But, that's where Joseph Campbell was coming from, and I think he's basically right. I mean, I think these are These are archetypal. They do seem to speak to us, and Hollywood has kind of proved it. To go back to the point of what's the American mythology, it's like it's Star Wars, and it's all these, and it's the Matrix, and it's all these stories.
You hear that, Jordan? It's Star Wars.
Yeah. The problem with that is that we can't all be Luke, right? Like Luke, in fact, none of us can be Luke, right?
I can be Luke.
No, you don't have the Force. You don't have the mitochondrials.
We are all the Luke of our own lives.
No, but you literally can't be Luke. You're not the son of the Emperor. You weren't born the son of the Emperor.
Neither
right?
was Luke the son of the Emperor, though.
You might be Wedge, right, Moses? In fact, you kind of look a little bit like Wedge. So, like that's...
No, you are Luke, and you are Luke, and you are Luke, and you are Luke. Everyone is the hero. Everyone is on the hero's journey.
But you see how you can't... Luke was born to greatness by virtue of the fact that,
So are you.
Darth Vader was, basically a modern equivalent would be, Prince William, right? He's Prince Charles's son. He was born. There's a genetic link to greatness there, right? Luke was chosen while he, to be great while he was basically in the womb, right? But the mitochondrials chose him to be awesome, right? like that's not, that's not achievable for a regular person, right? Like Han Solo is a better example. Han Solo is somebody who's a regular person and who becomes a hero, right?
Right, but that's the archetype, that we are all special. You in your own life are special and unique, and you have a journey with certain challenges and certain purpose. And I totally embrace that. I think it's a positive thing that we can all look at in ourselves that way. It's like, the shadow side of it is some of the things that you're talking about, Jordan. Believing that you are more special than someone else, or believing you don't have to work for greatness because you're destined for greatness. And we
were all in high school with that guy.
Yeah.
Fight Club was a rejection of that, right? And that's what I loved about Fight Club, is that that was the first time that I ever looked around at society and the myths and the stories we tell ourselves and say, wait a second, yes, this is causing a lot of the discontent and unhappiness that we have in our life, is this myth of the chosen one, and I concede the point. The monomyth, the hero's journey, is not necessarily the chosen one, right? But it seems like these days, maybe in the last 40 years, they've become synonymous.
I don't know. I think that Jack follows the hero's journey. I think he does. I mean, it's not everybody's typical hero's journey, but to him, it totally makes sense. Well, I mean, to Tyler anyways. Right? He is making sure he's bettering society. None of it was for him. It was all going up against the big bad to make sure that everybody's life was improved.
He was rejecting the hero's myth. He was basically saying no one is special. He created a cult, a faceless cult, right?
Who worshipped him as the one.
But he didn't want that, right? So again, right, it's a rejection of that. Anyways, I think that we might have gone on a little bit too long for this episode, and our listeners are encouraged to read the books in question and make up their own minds.
Yeah, definitely.
And
real quick before
Christopher Vogler has a book too. I forget the actual title of it, but let me see. I think I can get it here in 2 seconds. Here, The Writer's Journey. So you can look that up as well, where he was outlining all this stuff.
And if you want a great way to understand what Joseph Campbell was saying, there's a wonderful interview between him and Bill Moyers that you can get. You can probably Netflix it, or they also have books published with the transcripts of the interview where he really dives into the meaning behind the monomyth and each step of it and what it means on like a larger level. And so if you're kind of like geek out about this stuff, I think it's a really great place to start.
Or just use the YouTube.
The Power of Myth is the name of that series. It's 6, I think, hour-long interviews. They split it up that way, 6 episodes, with Bill Moyers and Joseph Campbell. It is one of the most awesome spiritual things I have ever seen in my life. I had actually a teacher in high school who showed that to us in like 11th or 12th grade. We had to watch all of them. At the time, I thought it was so lame, and now I think it is the coolest thing ever. So if you have not seen The Power of Myth, do yourself a favor and check that out.
Okay, we're about out of time, so I'm afraid we've got to call it there. But we'd like to invite our listeners to let us know their thoughts on the hero's journey and the chosen one trope on our website, on our Facebook page, or Twitter. There's just a ton of ways to get a hold of us, writingpodcastonline.com. Additionally, I'd like to let everybody know that we are holding a Q&A show. So if you would like your question answered on Hide and Create, And of course, we will be citing listeners that write to us. Please let us know what you'd like answered on our Facebook page, on writingpodcastonline.com, or on Twitter. So we are looking forward to your feedback, and we'll see you next week.
This has been another episode of Hide and Create. The show is produced by me, Jordan Ellinger. The site is edited by Joshua Essoe, and my co-hosts have been Jaye Wells and Moses Siregar. That music that you're listening to was written by Jason Donnelly. We can be reached at writingpodcastonline.com, where you can ask us questions or suggest topics for future shows. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider reviewing us on iTunes, liking our Facebook page, or subscribing to the Hide and Create YouTube channel. That's all for now. Now go hide and create something.